I finally got it, you guys. I wanted the best retro handheld for so long, and now I'm gonna open it up and check it out. I'm excited. I bet you're excited to see which handheld is the best one too, right? Well, let's take a look. Oh, that's bullshit. Hey there, how you doing? I'm TechDweeb, welcome. As a YouTube video making guy, that's what it says on my business card, I get lots of questions in my comments, which is great. I love answering questions from you guys. All sorts of nice questions from people that make me feel really good about myself. But the question that I get the most, more than any other question, is, what is the best retro handheld? Even YouTube itself wants me to make this video. And like, the answer is already out there, but it seems like people don't want to know the nitty-gritty details of which handheld does what. They don't want to think too much about their needs and which will serve their needs and the best in the long run. They just want the simple answer, the quick fix, right to the point. Just tell me, TechDweeb, what is the best one, damn it? Okay, I know you want the best one, and I'll tell you, I'll give you an answer, but I need to just explain something first. In lots of ways, the idea of the best of anything is just, it's not a concept that makes sense. It's like when you're buying something, anything. What does the best actually mean? Does it mean that it has the most high-end components and materials? Or the best longevity? Or what about having the best features? Or what about value? And then there's personal preference, because what's best for one dweeb isn't going to be best for another. But it's even harder in the retro handheld world because there are objective things that a retro emulation handheld needs to do to be good for specific retro emulation tasks. The best PSP handheld will have a 16:9 widescreen like the PSP had, but that would end up being a terrible Game Boy handheld, for instance, because the Game Boy had a square screen. So that's the caveat. Despite the title of this video, there is no one best thing. And if you want something perfect for your needs, you should watch lots of reviews about all sorts of devices and find out which one fits your needs the best. But I need to answer the question, right? That's why I'm making this video, that's what you're here for. And if I'm picking one handheld to crown as the best handheld, I'm gonna approach this topic in a different way than I have in the past. Because I think if you're saying this is the best retro handheld, it should tick all the boxes, all those important things that everyone would agree are important in a retro handheld. So I guess we can kind of think of this as like the best one-size-fits-all handheld. I drove myself bonkers trying to settle on a doodad for this video. There are so many good choices. I really wish I could pick them all or show you just a whole bunch that would fit the criteria so that you could choose between them and I didn't have to actually choose. But that's not what this video is about, although I will give you some alternatives at the end. This video is about me picking one to crown as the best. And without further dilly-dallying, as my mom would say, the handheld I chose is the Amberlic RG35XX Plus. And before we get too far along, let's acknowledge that the name RG35XX Plus is a stupid name. So I gave all my Amberlic devices from this line way better names. I mean, I'm not going to go over all of them right now, but from now on in this video, I'm going to be calling this thing by its proper dweeby name, which is the Biggzazzle. And that's what you're going to call it too. So let's go over all the reasons why I chose this, starting with the one that is probably not a big deal to lots of people, but it's a huge deal for me, which is that the Biggzazzle looks like a real retro thing. I like the Game Boy DMG style personally, but all of them evoke the feeling of the original Game Boy. They're shaped like a Game Boy right down to the rounded edge down here with that iconic angled speaker grill. The DMG model nailed the color. It's the perfect warm beige that feels nostalgic without being gaudy and cheesy. And having a retro doodad that feels like a real retro thing is so important for a retro handheld. It's the cherry on top that makes playing retro games feel that little bit more magically nostalgic. Except that the cherries are gross, so that analogy is stupid. Next up, we have the quality. Say what you want about Amberlic as a company and their release schedule, but I think one thing everyone can agree on is that the quality you get in an Amberlic product is really good considering the price of these things. And in this generation with their XX devices, they have been strikingly consistent. Great D-pads, great buttons, great build, great screen. The Biggzazzle is a little tank. You'd have to work pretty hard to break this thing. I'd be more comfortable giving this to a kid or a clumsy uncle than almost any of my other doodads, which is saying a lot because my uncle is so clumsy. you guys. And then there's the form factor. The Biggzazzle is just the right size and shape. It's a great middle ground size. It's not just very small like the micro doodads that might get your hands all crampy, but it's not huge like the big boys that don't fit in your pocket. There's some nice ergonomic features on this that make it comfy to hold for longer gaming sessions while still keeping it slim and pocket friendly. There are slimmer handhelds and there are more ergonomic handhelds, but the Biggzazzle nails the balance better than any other, in my opinion, which is correct. This next category is going to cover all the hardware, and I'm just going to call it components. The Biggzazzle gets so much right. Good D-pad, great quality inputs, and it's sort of rounded on the edges and it's not too firm, so it's not fatiguing during long game sessions. Same thing with the buttons, really high quality plastic and membranes. The screen too, it's bright and clear, gets nice and dim, great colors and great viewing angles, and it's 640 by 480, which is a very common resolution for retro handhelds. And there's a reason for that. It's the perfect middle ground with lots of options for scaling our retro systems, and a ton of the stuff that runs on here does pixel perfect scaling at this resolution or runs natively at 480p. The sound is one area that I guess isn't the best. We have a single mono speaker, but here it's almost required to be like this because of the fact that this is built as an homage to the Game Boy. So the speaker, it's got to be where the Game Boy speaker was, right? It's a fine speaker. It sounds fine, but it's not going to blow you away or anything. It's good enough for spontaneous Donkey Kong Country themed dance parties. I'll give it that. Next up is the features. Those things about this thing that give it more functionality, extra stuff you can do with it. And as retro doodads go, the Biggzazzle can pretty much do it all. First is it has Wi-Fi, so you can connect this bad boy up to the interwebs and gain access to things like retro achievements, which is like the modern addictive dopamine hits that us retro gamers crave. Also, you get net play, so you can play your retro games with your family or your friend or your enemy, I guess. And the stock OS doesn't have game art scraping, but custom OSs do. So you can scrape your game screenshots and ratings and metadata and even the game manuals to make your retro game collection a bit more engaging to browse through. It also has Bluetooth, so you can connect up a Bluetooth controller to be able to play your games without having the thing in your hands. And you can even use Bluetooth headphones. These are my cheap low latency wireless earbuds, the Redmi Buds 4 Active. And these work great with the Biggzazzle, with very little audio delay compared to my cheap Bluetooth earbuds. And also we get video out via a mini HDMI port on the top. So you can connect this up to a TV or monitor and use it in docked mode. And it kind of feels like a home retro console like this. This is such a nice feature to have. Also, when this thing is plugged in via HDMI, it does full proper widescreen, 720p. So you can play widescreen stuff, taking up the whole width of the screen. How cool is that? I'll answer for you. It's very cool, actually. And then there's even more stuff you can do with this thing. You can read books. I made a video about reading books on your retro doodads. You can do that here. You can use it as a video player, so you can watch movies like it's a little TV, and music if you're one of those weirdos who doesn't use your phone or streaming and prefers to use some sort of an MP3 player. You can use this thing as an MP3 player. The Biggzazzle is like a little Swiss Army knife of fun because it can do so much. I think that any retro handheld that we're going to call the best retro handheld needs to have a good system. That's kind of a non-negotiable. When the Biggzazzle was released, it didn't really have a good system. However, giving credit where credit is due, Amberlick has put in the work and made their stock OS for their XX devices actually good. Now it's easy to navigate and it's nice looking and it's very well organized and easy to do everything you want to do. It's got all the RetroArch options that you need if you want to tinker, if you're a tinkerer. And then there's the custom operating systems. There's a few to choose from. There's MinUI, which is a simple minimalist option for those who want something bare bones without any extra fluff. There's Miyoo OS, which is more for like tinkerers. It's a bit more complex, but it's also super quick and snappy. I made a TechDweeb theme for Miyoo OS as well, if you're into that sort of thing. And my favorite operating system for the XX devices is Newly, which is a repackaged version of Batocera. I am in love with Newly. Well, if you love it so much, why don't you marry it? Well, you know what? I would if I could. It's fun to use, you can customize the theme, and you can scrape your game screenshots and descriptions, and it has such an easy way to handle tweaking your game settings and stuff built right into the front end. And it will make you cool and popular, and all the cute girls will ask you if they could play with your handheld. When it comes to the performance, there are three general kind of categories of devices. There are those that are good for only the really old stuff, everything up to PS1. That's the low end. And then the high end is where we get perfect GameCube and PS2 and PSP and Dreamcast. And then the middle is the middle, where you get all the old stuff, but also some higher end stuff. But no matter where you land on that scale, the performance for a device is only good if it's compared to the price. If it plays all the GameCube games but it's $1,000, that's not a good option. If it can barely handle Super Nintendo and it doesn't play any PS1 but it was only $5, that might also be a good option. In my opinion, the Biggzazzle and basically the entire XX line of devices is the perfect middle ground. It does everything the lower end doodads do. Everything up to PS1 will be no problem at all, but you get a good amount of N64 and Dreamcast and PSP. This is what I look for in a retro handheld, especially one that I'm going to be recommending for most people. It needs to do all the retro stuff perfectly without compromises, and it needs to do a good amount of higher end 3D stuff to open up those libraries. But it doesn't need to do the highest end stuff because that's overkill for most people who just want to play good old retro games without breaking the bank. And that brings us to the most important aspect of this whole discussion. There are lots of amazing high-end devices, but if you have to spend multiple hundreds of dollars to get them, then they're probably not the best choice. Depending on where you get it from, the Biggzazzle can be found at really good prices, and the price changes throughout the year when there's sales and stuff on. Right now on LitNXT, which is who sent this to me, so thank you LitNXT for that, you can get this for $73 with free worldwide shipping if you use their Christmas discount code GIFT. I'll toss a link to this on their store in the doodad below. For $73, you get a device that is built like a tank with a great screen, great controls, great system. It plays all the old stuffs perfectly, including some of the higher end 3D stuffs like Dreamcast and PSP. There are cheaper devices that are great. There are more expensive devices that are great, but I think the Biggzazzle is just the best crowd pleaser. To make up my mind for the topic of this video, I had to put my own preferences aside, and I settled on the Biggzazzle for all the reasons that I already explained. However, even though I've crowned the Biggzazzle as the best, it's not my personal favorite. My favorite is the Miyoo Mini. However, that's me, and I would never say as a general statement, just get a Miyoo Mini because it's not going to be for everyone. I acknowledge that. I think another popular opinion of which would be the best would be the RETROID Pocket 5. That thing is also amazing in terms of price to performance. It does great GameCube and PS2. It has a beautiful OLED screen, great controls, comfy ergonomics. However, I would never say as a general statement, just get a RETROID Pocket 5 because it's not pocketable. Even though it does a ton, it's multiple hundreds of dollars, so that alone makes it an enthusiast device. And also it's Android, which is not a trivial thing for someone to set up and get going if they're not familiar with this hobby. The best device for a retro doodad nerd is not going to be the best device for most people who just want to buy a thing to carry around and play old Super Nintendo or whatever. If price isn't an object, in my opinion, the best would be the AYANEO DMG. That is like the king of retro handhelds to me. I worship this thing, but it's also like $350 for the base model, and the retro version is over $600. So while, yeah, it is the best, nothing better than it, not for me at least, it's so expensive that it's not the best choice for someone other than the nerdiest of nerds, which I guess is me. And then we have to think about all the other XX devices. Maybe you need a horizontal pocket-friendly version, or a bigger 4-inch screen, or if you want to play mostly Game Boy and Game Boy Color, or if you want something that feels more like a GBA SP. The Biggzazzle is the most middle ground of all of them. It's a good for everyone device. But hey, if you like the look of some of these better, I think any of these are a great choice. I'll have links to my review videos for all of these handhelds that I've discussed today down below, and a link to where you can buy them if you want to pick any of them up. So there you have it. I crowned the RG35XX Plus as the best handheld. I was expecting to make another Miyoo Mini Plus video, and I actually personally prefer the Miyoo Mini Plus, to be honest, especially if you get the pre-made AYANEO SSD card version. But for the handheld itself, when you consider all the extra features and stuff, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, HDMI, higher end emulation, the build quality, I had to settle on the Biggzazzle. It's so good for the price, so fun and easy to use, so comfortable and so easy to recommend. But now I really want to hear from you. Let us know in the comments, which do you think is the best? I am super curious what the common sentiment is going to be down there. But that'll do it for me for today. Click the thumbs up button if you liked the video, or don't if you didn't. I'm TechDweeb. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.